The first afternoon of our honeymoon was supposed to be the first time in 4 years that my phone didn't control my life. Instead, it destroyed it. Ethan was laughing as he tried to convince me to leave my phone inside the hotel room. "Angel," he said, taking my hand, "if your company survives without you for 1 week, it'll survive forever." Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. Then again. Then a third time. I smiled awkwardly, probably another congratulations message. I unlocked the screen. The smile disappeared. 3 text bubbles sat there from Vanessa Caldwell. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Consider it my wedding gift." For several seconds, I couldn't even blink. Ethan reached over and quietly took the phone from my hand. He read each message once, then looked back at me. "She actually sent this while we're on our honeymoon." I nodded. Then, strangely enough, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because nothing about it made sense. Vanessa had power, but not this kind of power. And if she had really done what she claimed, someone had just made the biggest mistake of their career. I took the phone back and opened my company email. Access denied. I tried the internal messaging app. Locked out. Payroll portal. Disabled. One final text appeared. "Don't contact anyone at the company. This decision is final. Enjoy married life." I stared at the screen for another moment before pressing the power button. The display went black. Ethan frowned. "You're just turning it off." "Yes. But she fired you." "If she actually had the authority," I replied, slipping the phone into my bag. "There's nothing I can do from a beach 3,000 miles away." "And if she didn't?" I looked out toward the ocean. "Then she's about to discover why company policies exist." We had postponed this honeymoon twice already. The first delay came when a warehouse management system failed 2 weeks before our original departure date. I stayed behind for 6 straight nights, rebuilding schedules and coordinating with every regional office until deliveries were moving again. The second delay happened because the executive transition Vanessa insisted on rushing was collapsing under its own weight. I stayed late every evening making sure nothing broke before finally telling Ethan, "After this week, I belong to you." He never complained. Not once. So I refused to let Vanessa steal a third honeymoon from us. For the next 3 hours, I ignored work completely. We walked along the shoreline, shared lunch overlooking the water, talked about everything except logistics, executive meetings, and quarterly reports. For the first time in years, I actually felt present. Then we returned to our room. "I think you're safe to check it now," Ethan said. I powered the phone back on. The screen froze for several seconds before notifications flooded in so quickly I couldn't read them. Missed call. Missed call. Voicemail. Text message. Another voicemail. The counter kept climbing. 32. 49. 78. 94. 127. There were messages from department heads, from human resources, from company attorneys, from executives whose numbers I'd never saved. Even several unknown international numbers. Ethan slowly leaned closer, reading over my shoulder as another missed call appeared. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "I don't think you're the one in trouble anymore." My thumb hovered over the first voicemail. Why was the entire company desperately trying to reach the employee they'd supposedly just fired? The first call I returned wasn't to human resources. It was to our chief financial officer. He answered before the phone had finished its first ring. "Angel." His voice wasn't angry. It was relieved. "Thank goodness, where are you?" "I'm on my honeymoon." "I know that," he said quickly. "Have you spoken to Vanessa since the text?" "The only thing she said to me today is that I'm fired." Silence. Then a long exhale. I was afraid of that. I glanced at Ethan, who was already watching my face. "What happened?" I asked. "What happened?" the CFO replied. "Is that half this company stopped moving the moment your accounts were disabled." I frowned. "That's not possible. It shouldn't be." He lowered his voice. "The transition dashboards you built are locked behind your authorization profile. Payroll approvals are stalled. 3 regional distribution schedules won't sync. Compliance reports due tomorrow can't be submitted." He paused. "And nobody else knows how to fix them." I closed my eyes. Months earlier, I'd suggested cross-training another operations manager. Vanessa had laughed during the meeting. "We don't need backups," she'd said. "You're making this sound more complicated than it is." Yet every time something failed, she appeared at my office door after hours. "Can you quietly fix this before my father notices?" I always did. Not for her. For everyone whose jobs depended on the company running smoothly. The CFO continued. "I've got department heads calling me every 5 minutes asking where you are." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You spent years protecting someone who never once protected you." As if to prove his point, my voicemail filled again. One operations manager begged, "Angel, trucks are sitting because nobody can release the routing changes." Another caller whispered, "Please, just tell us what to do." I looked at Ethan. "They fired me." He nodded. "So let the people who fired you solve their own problem." For the first time since joining the company, I didn't call back. I wasn't being spiteful. I was honoring the decision they'd made. If I was no longer their employee, I was no longer responsible for rescuing them. A few minutes later, another voicemail notification appeared. The number carried an international country code I didn't recognize. I pressed play. A calm, older voice spoke only one sentence. "Please don't board your flight home until you've spoken to me. This is Richard Caldwell." Richard Caldwell called again before I had time to replay the voicemail. I answered immediately. "Mr. Caldwell." "This is Richard." His voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath it I had never heard during my years at the company. "Angel, I need you to answer one question honestly." "Of course." "Did my daughter terminate your employment while you were on your honeymoon?" "Yes." "And did she send those exact words?" I looked down at my screen. "You're fired, effective immediately. Consider it my wedding gift." There was a long silence. When Richard finally spoke again, every word was measured. "Forward me screenshots of every message she sent you. Do not edit them. Do not crop them. Right now. Right now." Within seconds, I sent everything. The delivery notification appeared almost instantly. "I've received them," Richard said. "Thank you, an angel." "Yes." "You have my word. You will hear from me again today." The line went dead. While Ethan and I remained thousands of miles away, headquarters descended into chaos. An emergency executive meeting was called before lunch. Department heads abandoned their schedules. Conference rooms filled faster than anyone had ever seen. Human Resources was asked one simple question. Where is the board authorization for Angel Brooks' termination? The HR director searched every approval log. Nothing. She checked executive authorizations. Still nothing. Finally, she admitted, "We processed it because Ms. Caldwell stated she already had her father's approval." The room fell silent. Within an hour, rumors spread through every floor of the building. Vanessa hadn't simply fired a senior manager. She may have acted entirely on her own. The situation worsened when several long-term clients learned Angel had suddenly disappeared from ongoing projects. Instead of signing pending agreements, they requested delays until they understood what was happening. Millions of dollars sat in limbo. Confident she still controlled the narrative, Vanessa entered the executive boardroom with her usual composure. "Let's not overreact," she said. "Angel had become replaceable. My father will support this decision." Several executives exchanged uneasy glances, but said nothing. Then the conference room's screen lit up. Richard Caldwell appeared live from overseas. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't smile. He looked directly at every executive around the table. "Remain seated." No one moved. Then he delivered his next instruction. "I want every phone in this room placed on the table. An internal audit begins now." The last traces of confidence vanished from Vanessa's face. Before anyone could speak, the boardroom doors opened. Company security walked inside. By the time the sun set where Ethan and I were staying, the investigation had already begun. Richard called one last time. "Angel, I need one favor." "What is it?" "Don't solve anything." I blinked. "I'm sorry. I know everyone is calling you because they want you to rescue the company." His tone hardened. "I don't. I want the investigators to see exactly what happens when the person who held this operation together is removed without cause." For the first time in years, someone in authority wasn't asking me to clean up someone else's mess. He was asking me to let the truth speak for itself. Back at headquarters, investigators reconstructed every step leading to my termination. It pulled system logs. Human resources produced approval records. The legal department requested server backups. By late afternoon, a clear timeline began to emerge. The authorization for my dismissal had been altered only minutes before Vanessa sent me the text. Someone had inserted executive approval into the workflow, then overwritten the digital history. One investigator looked up from his laptop. "These timestamps don't match." Another answered quietly. They were changed. More documents surfaced. Among them were emails I'd sent Vanessa over the previous 6 weeks. Subject lines she had ignored. Compliance deadline. Vendor contract risk. Approval required before release. Every message ended the same way. "Please let me know how you'd like to proceed." There was no accusation. No blame. Only documentation. Each warning had been acknowledged. None had been followed. One compliance deadline she dismissed had now expired. The penalty attached to that single oversight was worth several $1,000,000. Suddenly, my firing looked less like arrogance, and more like an attempt to remove the one person who knew exactly where the problems were hiding. Then investigators made another discovery. Entire conversation threads were missing. Internal messages between Vanessa and senior managers had vanished from the company's server. Vanessa immediately blamed a technical failure. "Our messaging platform has glitches all the time." But it wasn't convinced. Deleted didn't always mean gone. It simply meant harder to find. Meanwhile, Richard asked whether I'd kept copies of anything important. "I archive everything," I told him. Professionally. Years of managing operations had taught me one lesson. If it wasn't documented, eventually someone would claim it never happened. I uploaded my archived emails, meeting notes, and decision logs to the investigation team. Within an hour, one attorney called back. "Angel, this fills in almost every missing gap." Richard reviewed the growing evidence in silence. Finally, he spoke. "You weren't covering mistakes." He sounded almost disappointed in himself. "You were preventing disasters." Ethan squeezed my hand. "I've been telling you that for years." I smiled faintly. I just never expected anyone else to notice. At headquarters, Vanessa's confidence began to crack. She insisted I had manipulated the documents. She planned this. One board member folded his arms. Then why do her records match the company's untouched backups? Vanessa had no answer. At that exact moment, the IT director entered the room carrying a laptop. "We've recovered the deleted internal messages." The conference room became completely silent. One by one, the restored conversations appeared on the large display at the front of the room. Richard looked at every person seated around the table before speaking in a calm, controlled voice. "Let's read every one of them." Vanessa shot to her feet. "Wait." Every head turned toward her. "I'll tell you why I fired Angel." Vanessa stood frozen for a moment, gripping the edge of the conference table so tightly her knuckles turned white. No one interrupted her. No one tried to help. Richard simply folded his hands. "Go ahead," he said evenly. "We're listening." She looked around the room, searching for a sympathetic face. She found none. Finally, she let out a slow breath. "I fired Angel because she knew too much." The room remained silent. Every time I made a decision, she questioned it. Richard's expression never changed. "No," he replied. "She documented it." Vanessa shook her head. "You don't understand. Every executive compared me to her. Every department trusted her instead of me." One board member leaned forward. "So you terminated the person keeping your operation running." "I needed people to rely on me," Vanessa answered. "Not her." Richard looked down at the printed screenshots of the text messages she'd sent me. "Consider it my wedding gift," he read aloud. Then he looked back up. "You chose the happiest day of her life because you believed she'd be too distracted to fight back." Vanessa didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered, "I thought if she disappeared for a week, everyone would adjust." The chief financial officer quietly answered her. "They didn't." He slid a report across the table. Within 3 hours, distribution slowed in multiple regions. Payroll approvals stalled. Client onboarding stopped. Compliance deadlines were missed. We lost control because the person who understood these systems was the one you removed. The lead investigator opened another folder. "We've completed the digital review." He placed several documents in front of the board. The executive approval authorizing Ms. Brooks' termination was altered after the fact. He turned another page. The board never approved her dismissal. Another page. The CEO never approved it. Then the final page. Ms. Caldwell also concealed multiple compliance failures by deleting internal communications and bypassing required approval procedures. Vanessa lowered her head. There was nothing left to argue. Every deleted message, restored by it, matched the records I had quietly archived over the years. The emails, the meeting notes, the warnings. Each one showed the same pattern. I hadn't tried to embarrass her. I'd tried to protect both her and the company. Richard closed the folder. "I trusted you with leadership," he said to his daughter. "You treated it like ownership." No one spoke. The truth no longer depended on opinions. It was sitting on the table in black and white.